Right, we're back.
There we go, Chair. Yeah, off you go.
Right, thank you. Ross, if you could take us through the recommendations, please.
Sure. So the recommendation is to increase the inflation hedge on the fund's liabilities back up to 35%, i.e. the level it was prior to the reduction that was made back in March. And then once we have clarity over the RPI reform matter, to potentially increase the inflation hedge further up to 45% outside of the trigger framework.
Thank you, Ross. Is everyone in favour of the recommendation? Have I got anybody against?
Charles Garris, Chair, has notified me he wished to abstain from voting.
Right, okay. So Charles is abstaining, but apart from that, everyone's in favour. Is that correct, Mark?
Yes, Chair, as far as I can see, yes.
Yeah. Move the recommendation has been moved. And we'll now move on to item 13. Yeah. And Nathan again, please.
Thank you, Chair. Only a brief point from me before I hand to Steve Mercer to talk through their performance report. So it's that officers are currently in the process of implementing a revised strategic benchmark that will take effect from next quarter's reporting. And that benchmark is going to reflect the asset allocation changes that were made as part of the investment strategy review. Yeah, I mean, unless there are questions on the covering report, I was just going to pass across to Mercer.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. So Q2 was a very positive quarter for the fund. We saw an increase of almost 500 million in the value of the assets. The assets, pretty much everything went up, especially equities and different forms of credit assets. So as a result, the assets outperformed the liabilities by around 8% or so, and that led to the improvement in the funding level. So the funding level was around about 92, 93%, which is around about 3% short of where we expected in terms of the recovery plan. All things considered, we think that's not too bad a position to be in now, given the upheaval that we saw in markets in March. The reason why markets recovered so strongly was very much as a result of the actions taken by central banks, in particular the Fed, and support from governments. Obviously, we're seeing a re-emergence of COVID, and we're seeing sort of governments react in various degrees. We've got the US elections coming up in November, which is another sort of key development from a politics and also sort of market position-wise. If you look at the funds that were invested in, they all delivered, as expected, strong absolute returns, but also most of them outperformed by a healthy degree their benchmarks. So that includes the Brunel portfolios, but also the managers that we still had exposure to. I think it is worth noting now, you do have the majority of your assets managed by Brunel, so only have a very small number of direct manager appointments. So we've been in discussions with Liz and Nathan about changing the structure of our performance report, and we'll have to sort of work with Brunel to get more detailed, more useful information, so we can sort of help monitor what is actually sort of going on in terms of their funds. So a number of the managers that you would have seen performance for in your report, such as Perford, Ruffer, you don't actually have any exposure to them anymore because of the transition changes to Brunel. And then strategically, the key issues that we're most concerned about and that we've discussed with the panel, I think you have fully addressed and are well set to potentially sort of navigate. And they are risks to the downside on equities. So the equity protection gives us comfort around that. And then we are concerned about over the medium term inflationary increases. And that's quite a significant issue for you, given that all of your liabilities are inflation linked. So the proposal that Ross has discussed, that should help give you some additional protection if we do see further increases in inflation. So clearly there's a lot going on in terms of markets. We're very much in a transition period in terms of the assets moving over to Brunel, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Can I ask a question? Nobody coming.
William, yeah.
Yes. I heard Charles said about his concern about inflation in the COVID world. We have not mentioned the Brexit yet in this meeting, and that's something that in back of my mind may cause some inflation issue. Can I just ask from your point of view, but as you can perceive what Brexit might do to us, the fund, if there's no deal?
Yeah, so in the pack, William, in the risk management report, there is actually specific reference to Brexit and the risks of Brexit on trade and inflation. And to be clear, the recommendation to increase the inflation protection is also related to concerns about Brexit.
Yeah.
But to put it in proportion, Brexit, I mean, it's obviously that the market has known about it for quite some time. So the market has already priced in a lot of sort of Brexit event, shall we say. But we don't see Brexit as being as a significant issue in relation to, say, what's happening with COVID.
No.
Okay.
Thank you, William. Wendy, did you want to ask a question?
No, thank you. I think I've just been trying to do something, unfortunately.
Oh, right.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions, please? If there's no other questions, then I think we're moved to the vote, and we're asked to note the investment performance and strategy monitoring. Is everybody in favour of that? I presume they are. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Steve. We move on to number 14, which is pension fund administration, which is Jeff, please, if I may.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. This report is for the committee for noting and reflects work across the fund administration and includes a summary of key regulatory updates and the current risk register. So I'll start off with the administration. With the COVID crisis ongoing, officers continue to work remotely from home. Focus remains on critical service processes to maintain timely payment of member benefits, and this is reflected positively in the case workload completed against SLA targets, and this is evidenced on page 235, Appendix 1, Annex 1. Non-critical processes appear generally to be below target of the SLA, but remain positive when measured in line with statutory legal requirements, as reflected again on page 241, Appendix 1A. In general, the outstanding workload has reduced over the course of the last year, although the percentage number of workable cases at the moment is beginning to rise. The reduction in workload in part reflects the lag of cases that are coming through, or will now come through, that are generated by the year-end process, while the increase in outstanding workable cases can be attributed attributed even to the difficulties of remote working. Work undertaken with employers to complete the year-end reconciliation process is now completed, resulting in the fund issuing member annual benefit statements ahead of the statutory deadline of 31st of August. This has been a particularly complex and challenging exercise, given the circumstances with which officers have had to work together, but in isolation, to deliver this project successfully. So a big thank you really to all those guys involved in that exercise. Contact and engagement with employers is ongoing, with no significant operational issues noted at the moment. And I will point out that we are going through a recruitment process as approved by committee back in December last year. It's taken some time to work through given the current situation. But we have a 3-phase strategy in place, which now has started, which we hope will result in us actually recruiting around about just over 11 posts by the mid part of next year, by early spring, all being well. Before I move on to the regulatory update, does anyone have any questions on the paper so far? Charles?
My concern is on this recruitment scenario, especially with this increasing degree of COVID in the current climate. It's just how you're going to manage it.
Well, the situation, Charles, is it is quite difficult, which is why we're undertaking the process in a staged approach over the course of the next probably 6 to 8 months. So we've recruited internally officers to undertake the training. So we have the internal expertise to take the recruitment through the process. But because everything is so remote, including the interview process, the appointment process, we are limiting ourselves to how we take this recruitment through stage by stage. So it will be very, very closely controlled, because it clearly could have an impact if we overload the teams with new members of staff. So
thank you. I appreciate the challenge that you face, and I'm reassured by your comment it might take 6 to 8 months to achieve it. But that length of time, what is that going to do in terms of the impact on the work that you were anticipating having done by the additional staff?
Well, we've been in a situation so far where we've been under-resourced for some time. So we are managing. Some of our process is automated, but some of the recruitment that we're looking to bring in is to actually reinforce our workforce, if you like, and kind of begin to work in sort of to support our existing sort of processes. So at the moment we are quite thinly we are quite thin in some of the areas of our teams. So it's just a situation that it's a chicken and an egg situation, really. We have to manage the best we can at the moment. There will come a time when the recruitment coming into the section with the internal training, hopefully we'll introduce it in a kind of a way that it just fills us in gradually, rather than becomes overburdensome.
Thanks very much.
George, can I have Sharon, please?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you. Jeff, I think the team are doing a sterling job in a very, very difficult situation. And I welcome the recruitment activity that's currently going on. But my question is about what's our backup plan if we're not able to recruit? Obviously it's logistically difficult, but it's also whether we're able to attract the right individuals. So do we have a backup plan? And then the second question was really about home working and how sustainable that is, given that could be the case for the next 6 months.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Shirley. First of all, we are obviously looking to. We have a fallback possibility of bringing in additional outside help. And we have done that to a degree, and hopefully this may answer part of Charles' question, I don't know, but we are already working with professional organisations to provide support where necessary. So that will be ongoing. That's picking up some of our project work and sort of larger pieces of work, if you like. So that will remain in place for some time, or the foreseeable future, probably. Remote working, as we know, is going to continue for 6 months and beyond. I was going to pick up on this a little bit later, but you know, it certainly is beginning to tell on 1 or 2 people. There is obviously a health and well-being within our employer, within the council, where people can hopefully get help if need be. I don't think it's quite got that desperate just yet, but 1 or 2 people are beginning to struggle a little bit. Certainly, we are, as far as possible, having meetings either online or where possible remotely, and at a safe distance. So where we can sort of introduce personal face-to-face meetings, we're doing that as much as we can. But it is a challenge. It is a challenge.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Pauline.
Sorry, I'm just going off mute. Thanks, Chair. I think my question's actually been more or less answered there by Jeff. So I was just going to ask about morale and whether or not there's any objective indicator that we can look at to kind of get a feel for just how people are feeling. I don't know if maybe employees feed in to a process or anything, and we can get an idea if things are improving or deteriorating. I welcome the fact that you're catching up face to face and virtually, but I think we just need to really keep a close eye, particularly, you know, if this could go on, and it's difficult currently, and it's going to go on for maybe, say, at least 6 months. So I'm pleased to hear that you're doing these things.
Thank you, Pauline. Yes, sorry. I mean, we have undertaken and will continue to undertake regular sort of health checks, if you want to call it that. So we are sort of engaging in that respect to ensure that people's mental health and well-being is in a fit place. I think just generally, you know, the situation with the reversal, if you like, of home working being the place to be if you can work from home for the foreseeable future, and with the winter coming, it's you know, we're going to have to think of how we're going to actually engage in a different way, perhaps with our staff officers to kind of help them through this as much as we possibly can, because where the nature of the beast is that we are very much team working, and
thank you, Jeff.
We're not in that situation at the moment.
Thank you, Jeff. Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, we're moving into uncharted territory, really. I think it's been, we've been very, very lucky in the fact we've had such wonderful weather over the past 3, 4, 5 months of lockdown, and actually that's taken some of the edge off home working for a lot of our staff. But moving into the winter time, I think the reality will change quite significantly. I think Jeff has probably underplayed quite a bit the sheer amount of work that Jeff and the other managers within the administration and Liz are having to do on communication and engagement and sort of motivation and management of the teams to make sure that things do keep running, and that engagement is still ongoing, and that people remember that they're part of a team, that, you know, the pension fund has got a culture, a way of working and operating, and we certainly don't want to see that diminish over the coming months. But you know, we're under no illusions that this is not going to be easy, really, but we'll continue to work on it as a management team. As far as backup plans are concerned, as Jeff said, we've obviously been working with other consultancies to give them specific bits of work. We will continue to do that if we can, bearing in mind that, you know, a lot of other organisations are going to be exactly the same position. You know, my expectation is that some of our performance might deteriorate over the next 6 months or so. We will be keeping a close eye on it, but I think it's going to be a natural consequence of the position we find ourselves in. So we probably should prepare for that. And the responsibility of myself and Jeff and the team then is to make sure we focus on the priorities, about making sure that people are getting paid and the pensions are going out the door, and that we have all the emergency measures in place to make sure that that can continue to happen. And that's what we focused on way back in March, as soon as the lockdown commenced and the seriousness of the situation had become apparent. So, we do have a bit of confidence that we can continue to offer robust service. We're in constant contact with our employers as well to make sure that they are able to deliver their end of the service as well. And we take every day as it comes, and we continue to monitor. But it is going to be a difficult 6 months potentially, and we'll just have to manage it as best we can. But to all intents and purposes, Jeff and Liz and the team are actually doing a very, very good job in difficult circumstances at the moment.
Thank you, Tony. Jeff, would you like to sum up, please?
I was just going to move on to the regulatory part of the update.
If you would, yes, please.
I hadn't quite finished. So just, and I may need to bring Kate in, Kate Shaw, the technical and compliance advisor, depending on what may come through on this. But just a couple of areas which will have a significant impact through the regulatory update. Firstly, the McLeod Sargent remedy, which will require time and resource to manage. And the annex to Appendix 4, which within your papers provides far more detail of the scope and the impact. The fund is in the process of responding to MHCLG consultation, which closes on the 8th of October, and further information and any decision will be brought to the next committee for consideration on that. Secondly, the expected implementation of the public sector exit cap, the 95k cap. MHCLG has again released a further consultation, which it appears will have far-reaching implications for funds, employers and members alike. The consultation will run until the 9th of November, and we are currently awaiting draft regulations, which will hopefully provide some further clarification on this. In the meantime, the bill is making its merry way through the parliamentary process, but clearly this will present a major challenge again to the administration. Are there any questions on regulatory? I'm happy to take them, or Kate may help now, and I'll just finish. Otherwise, I'll finish off.
No questions, I don't think.
Okay, thank you. Well, just to finish off, and it kind of covers what Tony has already said, but in summary, from a business operational perspective, the administration is heading into a perfect storm. With remote working set to continue and the further challenges of complex regulation changes expected, this will make for an inevitable downturn in performance, with problem solving and team working being compromised as the impact of training and communications becomes less effective and staff become less resilient and slightly disengaged, understandably. To address any potential risk and plan for future working for our staff and support for our staff, we clearly need to review our digital platform, and that needs to be overhauled. So Tony, as head of service and senior management team, will be taking an early review of the admin strategy, which is in place since last year, and we'll obviously bring any changes to the committee for any further decision and consideration in due course. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We move that we note the Pension Fund Administration report. Have I got anybody against that? No? Well, thank you very much, Jeff. And we'll move on to item 15, which is budget and cash flow monitoring. David Richards, please.
Hi, sorry, you've got me again.
I've got you again. Right, okay.
You always seems to be on holiday for committee meetings. So this is the normal monitoring report, and it actually is only a very short period. So I wasn't going to make any comments on the actual budget, but I think it's important to note that I've been looking at the actuarial and the investment advisory budgets and as to where we are now and what we budgeted back in January, February, so it's pre-COVID, and also pre the investment strategy. And so I think that when we come to December, we will be maybe putting forward forecasted increases in those budgets that we'll bring to you. And they're mainly due to extra pressures of COVID. We've obviously had to look a lot more at the investment strategy, but also at our employers and issues around funding. So we've had a lot more interaction with the advisors. We've got a lot of these new regulations coming in, which means that we're in the process of reviewing quite a few of our policies around employer exits and all sorts of things, and obviously didn't plan for that. And we also have the investment strategy changes. So we committed to do a review of the equity portfolio, which we'll be doing largely in this financial year, but also the implementation of the dynamic equity protection strategy. We put money in, but we didn't know what the costs were going to be if we were depending on each implementation route. We hadn't decided that at that point in time. So those are the two that will come to you in more detail in December. So that's just a heads up. And the other thing in this report is that we're still being audited. It hasn't finished yet. The accounts will be going to the Corporate Audit Committee, I think, in October, November. But one of the things that the committee will have to consider is they'll have to actually consider the going concern basis for the pension fund explicitly, which they haven't had to do before. It's just been wrapped up, I think, in the going concern of the council, but they want us to look at it separately. There is no issue, I will say, about the pension fund being a going concern, but it's just that we're going to have to put some formal wording in for the Corporate Audit Committee to consider. And I've just put forward what that current wording is drafted at the moment. It will change, no doubt, with further conversations with the external auditors and with the Section 151 officer who's responsible for taking the paper to the Corporate Audit Committee. So that was the only two things I had to say. I'm happy to
Thank you, Liz.
Hopefully not on
Surely.
the budget itself.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Liz, I'm not quite sure this is related particularly to this item, but I was just want to ask about the covenants and whether there were any areas of concern in terms of, not of the overall fund, obviously, but individual employers.
Happy to answer that. No, I mean, we were very concerned, obviously, and we do think that there will still problems will arise over the next period, the next 6 to 12 months. I think are going to be really difficult for some of our employers. We have a covenant monitoring plan in place, and I actually reviewed it yesterday with the team to decide exactly where we need to focus our time and make sure that we have overview and we understand what's going on. I think that some issues will arise and there might not be much that we can do about them. I think we have to be realistic. But the funding, the employers in general are well funded. We're not at a 60% funding position like we could have been. We have been in the past. So it's in that sense it's quite good. It also goes back to John Cato's comment about what happens if the equity markets fall, etc. We might not be in such a good funding position, but we do have that. One of the regulations that's been laid is to enable employers to do deferred debt agreements. I can't remember if that's what it's actually called, but basically to exit the fund, but then have a repayment program, which then be revised. So I think that we will maybe see an increase we will now see people, employers wanting to do that perhaps. So we've got an awful lot, and that's why I'm saying we're doing a lot of work with the actuary at the moment to get our policies in place. So in December, we'll most likely be bringing a paper to the committee about some of these policies that affect employers and how we manage exits and things like that, because it's really important. I think that the other issue will be what level of resourcing we actually will need to ensure that we do have effective monitoring of our employers. So I'm going to be closely watching, looking at the plan and understanding how quickly and how much time it takes, and if necessary we'll we'll maybe have to get some more resources. It might be just we'll pull them in from the actual accounting, the finance team, to be honest.
Yeah.
But we just do need to make sure that we do it properly, but also to help the employers, because some of them will be in very, very difficult places. We've only had a couple of employers come to us so far and want to talk about things, but none of them are help, we're in a dreadful position and what do we do?
Okay.
It's more about, we're planning, thinking about doing this. How does this fit?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's
Thank you,
helpful.
Shirley. William?
Oh, thank you, Chair. But I was not going to say anything. I just highlighted that there's a little M missing from the 203.1 on the statement.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, but just on Pauline's question about employers going concern, I've noticed that in the previous pension fund administration report, there sort of seems to be any high level of delay in payment from employers, which is good news in a sense. But I do agree with Liz that it is the next period is watching on as this COVID pandemic is prolonged into the 2021, and that's where we're going to start hitting a few really bumpy roads.
Thank you, William. Right, Liz, are you anything else to bring up?
No, that was me finished.
That's you finished, right? Okay, so I'm going to propose that we note the report. Is there anybody against that? I don't think so. So we'll move on to item 16, which is the Pension Board Annual Report. Back to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is for the Pension Committee just for noting and presents the annual report of the local pension board's activities for the year 2019-2020, which will be included with the fund's annual report when presented to full council.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions? No questions, then I'll ask you to, I'll propose that we note the report. Paul May.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a governance question. Does this go to all four councils? I know it goes to Baines, but does it go to Bristol, South Gloss and North Somerset?
Jeff?
Shall I answer, Chair? Sorry.
Oh, yes, Tony, please.
Yeah, the answer is I believe so, but I'm not convinced by my answer. So I'll have to check for you. Okay, because I'm not quite sure how it gets there and who sends it, whether the chair sends it directly himself or we send it as part of our own report as well, because certainly we do circulate our own report to them and it's usually attached to that, I believe, but I'll check.
Could I suggest, Chair, that perhaps we make a recommendation in the minutes that it does go to them, because I know in Baines it's taken very seriously. And I'm sure it would be in the other authorities as well. Is that reasonable?
I think so.
Yes, we'll note the recommendation, Chair, and we will make sure it does go.
Right, okay. So we note the recommendations and we make sure that it goes off to the other three councils in our area, in the Avon area. Okay with that, Paul? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Okay. Right, we'll move on to number 17, work plans. Caroline Morgan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Attached to this report is the quarterly monitoring report for the service plan. This covers a high-level overview of all the projects for the investment and pension administration teams, including progress to date. In addition, there is the committee and investment panel's work plans, setting out the provisional agendas for the forthcoming meetings. This report is just for noting.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Caroline? Being no questions, then I will thank her very much for the report and announce that we note the report. Is there anybody against that decision? Being nobody against the decision, I put that we just note it. Thank you, Caroline. And I'd like to thank everybody. I'll close the meeting, but I'd like to thank everybody for attending or watching the meeting. This is very hard for me. I'm used to chairing a load of people around the big tables and that, and this is very hard for me. So I hope you'll put up with me. This new technology is not mine. So I will now formally close the meeting. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.